Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm John Tucker. Here are the stories we're following today.
John, we are seeing stocks rise around the world on growing optimism the U.S. will avoid a recession. The latest data from inflation to jobless claims and retail sales have reassured investors that the world's biggest economy is headed for a Goldilocks scenario of contained inflation accompanied by resilient growth. It's got traders lowering their expectations for aggressive Fed rate cuts this year. Ian Lingen is head of U.S. rate strategy at BMO Capital Markets.
I think that what they want to do is they want to prepare the market for a series of rate cuts that are 25 basis points each, spread out over the course of the next 18 to 24 months. And they're not going to accomplish that by going 50. So we think that 25 should be the baseline assumption, unless something goes very awry in the real economy between now and the 18th of September, which it doesn't appear to, especially given the recent data.
Yeah, Ian Lingen at BMO notes that 90 basis points the easing are expected by the end of the year.
And the economy also in focus in Europe. And let's get the very latest data point with Bloomberg's Ewan Potts in London. Ewan, good morning.
Good morning, John and Nathan. After retail sales came in hot in the US, signs of an uptick in consumer spending here in the UK. Retail sales bounced back in July, helped by summer discounts, the Euro Soccer Championship, and at last, some decent weather. Sales climbed 0.5%, with June's drop revised shallower. The macro backdrop is one of rising real wages and lower inflation lifting confidence. And I can report the sun is still shining as we head through August. In London, I'm Ewan Potts, Bloomberg Radio.
That gives us something to look forward to here on the East Coast. Thank you, Ewan. Well, the carry trade is making a comeback. Nomura Holdings says a variety of investors have started borrowing the Japanese yen again to invest the proceeds elsewhere in higher yielding assets. The yen carry trade blew up in spectacular fashion 2 weeks ago, sending global markets tumbling. Traders wagered billions of dollars that the yen would weaken before the currency jumped last month. One portfolio manager summed up the carry trade comeback saying, people have pretty short memories.
Yeah, and now to the latest on the Middle East, Nathan. International mediators holding a second day of negotiations with Israel to pause the war with Hamas in Gaza. Let's get more from Bloomberg's Rosalind Matheson.
We know the sticking points are significant. It's a bit hard to know what to make of the fact that talks are going on today and that they were scheduled to potentially do so. That could either mean that things are really, really stuck, but they're trying really hard to find a way through. Could also mean that they are seeing little signs of progress. But we do know about those fundamental sticking points. I mean, most broadly, the biggest one is, what does the ceasefire aim to achieve? Is it a pathway to end the war or not?
Bloomberg's Rosalind Matheson reports Hamas representatives are not expected to be present at the talks, but mediators will brief the Iran-backed group on the latest developments.
And now to politics here in the U.S., John. Vice President Kamala Harris will give voters a better idea of her economic policy during a speech later today in North Carolina. Bloomberg's Amy Morris brings us a preview from Washington.
The Harris campaign is zeroing in on high food prices as inflation remains a big issue in the presidential race. And she's expected to push for a federal ban on price gouging on groceries. Harris is putting particular emphasis on rising meat prices, which she says account for a large part of rising grocery bills. Harris says she would aim to enact the ban within her first 100 days, in part by directing the Federal Trade Commission to impose harsh penalties on any firms that break new limits on price gouging. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Amy, thank you. And the Harris campaign also says the vice president will propose a benefit for first-time home buyers up to $25,000 in down payment support. That builds on a proposal from President Biden in his State of the Union address for a $10,000 tax credit for first-time buyers.
And on the Republican side, former President Donald Trump held another news conference at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, trying to counter Harris's momentum. He says his strategy of personal attacks against the vice president is working.
I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence, and I think she'll be a terrible president. And I think it's very important that we win.
The former president defying critics and some allies who say his rhetoric delves into racist and sexist stereotypes. Trump supporters have urged him to focus on policy and tie Harris to President Biden's unpopular record on the economy.
Well, meantime, John, the former president's opening his records on his finances. A 265-page financial disclosure includes more than $500 million in income from his resorts and residential properties and tens of millions in debts and liabilities from his legal challenges. The document also lists more than $50 million from Trump's social media company, more than $7 million from licensing his image on non-fungible tokens, and more than $5 million in book sales.
And the White House has walked back President Biden's comment on the potential of a new Venezuelan election. That story this morning from Bloomberg's Ed Baxter.
The president asked by reporters as he walked to board his Marine One helicopter whether he supported new elections in Venezuela, and he responded, "I do." Well, there have been charges, of course, that the Nicolas Maduro election was rigged, but now a spokesman for the National Security Council said Biden intended to speak on the absurdity of Maduro failing to come clean after claiming victory. Spokesman Sean Savitt saying it is clear Maduro did not win. Maduro responded the U.S. should not interfere, that Venezuelans are in charge in their homeland. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ed, thanks. We've just gotten word the Biden administration is awarding Texas Instruments $1.6 billion in CHIP Act grants and $3 billion in loans. It's the latest major award from a program designed to boost American semiconductor manufacturing. And Texas Instruments stock is up 1% in early trading.
And on the flip side, shares of Applied Materials down 3% in early trading. The largest U.S. maker of chip manufacturing equipment delivered an inline sales forecast. Well, that's disappointing investors who've been looking for a bigger payoff from AI spending. And that brings us to 5:07 on Wall Street. Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, John. We're learning New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been hit with more federal subpoenas in a corruption probe. The mayor telling ABC7 he is vowing to cooperate.
I hold myself beyond a reproach, and when you receive a subpoena, you respond.
Last November, the FBI served search warrants, including at the Brooklyn home of Adams' fundraiser, Brianna Suggs. And agents also approached the mayor on the street, seizing his electronic devices. It is unclear what prompted the new subpoenas, which were actually served last month. And Adams' attorney repeated the mayor had done nothing wrong. Ernesto strengthened to a Category 2 hurricane as it plowed northward toward Bermuda, threatening to drench the territory with heavy rain and unleash flash floods. Its top winds reached 100 miles per hour. Ernesto is expected to become a major Category 3 hurricane later today as it approaches Bermuda. The track currently shows the storm passing to the west of the island. 2 California doctors are among the 5 people charged in the overdose death of actor Matthew Perry last year. Prosecutors say at the center of the case are Dr. Salvador Plasencia and Jasmine Sanga, an alleged trafficker known as the Ketamine Queen. U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada.
Defendant Plasencia saw this as an opportunity to profit off of Mr. Perry. He wrote in a text message in September 2023, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay."
U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada says if convicted, both Sanga and Plasencia could spend the rest of their lives in prison. Perry's assistant and 2 other suspects have pleaded guilty. The New York City Council has approved a plan to allocate $500 million to rezone parts of the Bronx to facilitate construction of thousands of new homes as the city struggles to address a shortage of affordable housing. The decision will allow for approximately 7,000 new units across dozens of blocks around new Metro North rail stations coming to the East Bronx, including 1,700 that will have income limits in place to keep them permanently affordable. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg, John.
Michael, thanks. And that brings us to 5:10 on Wall Street. That's time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. And for that, here's John Stashower.
Mets have been streaky all season. Lately, not so good. 5 losses the last 6 games, 38 runs allowed in those 5 losses. At Citi Field, Mets had a 5-0 lead before Oakland's J.J. Bleday had a grand slam of Jose Quintana, and the A's went on to win 7-6 to take the series. Mets home tonight from Miami. Yankees will play the Tigers tonight and tomorrow in Detroit, and then Sunday night in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, where the Little League World Series is going on. Yanks tied for first with Baltimore. The Orioles beat the Red Sox 5-1. The Phillies crushed the Nationals 13-3 as rookie Weston Wilson became the 9th in Phil's history to hit for the cycle. And what would be quite a rule change, MLB is reportedly at least discussing the idea of making a starting pitcher go at least 6 innings unless they get hurt, throw 100 pitches, or allow 4 or more earned runs. The goal is to make the starting pitcher more important like it used to be. This is said to not be something that would happen anytime soon. Giants play a preseason game tomorrow afternoon in Houston, and Daniel Jones will be the starting quarterback. Went down last year with a torn ACL. Update on his training camp from Giants coach Brian Daboll.
I think he's made strides every day, and again, it's some new guys that we're thrown to. It's the first time he's been in teams, so it's been a steady, I'd say steady improvement from when we started, when he had first go through team and have people around his legs. There's new things, new pieces, new tight ends, new receiver. So that's always a work in progress.
Jets play tomorrow night at Carolina. Last night in Foxborough, Patriots for the second straight game used 4 quarterbacks. Drake May, who they took with the 3rd pick of the draft, went 6 for 11 at a TD run. The Pats lost to the Eagles 14-13. Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley did not play. WNBA, the Liberty back to the Olympic break, went to L.A., won by 35. They're now 22-4. Chris Kirk had a hole-in-one, shot 64, leads by a shot in Memphis. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on SiriusXM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager, and the presidential race is really off and running now, but not before one last symbolic passing of the torch from President Biden to Vice President Kamala Harris.
I have an incredible partner. The progress we've made, she's going to make one hell of a president.
Now, the president shared a stage for the first time with the new Democratic nominee since he ended his reelection bid last month. Now, Harris heads to swing state North Carolina to talk about her plans to make her own progress. And joining us now for more on the race is Jennifer Lawless, professor and chair of the politics department at the University of Virginia. Jennifer, good morning. Is there a challenge for Vice President Harris to sort of strike out on her own, make her own economic policies without being tied too much to some of the more unpopular policies under President Biden? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, that's certainly going to be what she tries to do over the course of the next couple of months. It's difficult because she wants to take credit for the successes of the Biden administration, but not be saddled by the failures or the challenges. And I think that's why it was before her economic speech that we saw her with the current president on the campaign trail. At this point, she'll begin to demonstrate that she's her own person.
And from what we've heard so far from the Harris campaign, that demonstration will include ideas like a federal ban on food price gouging, $25,000 in first-time homebuyer assistance. Is that enough to assuage voters who may still be feeling some pain from elevated prices over the last several years?
It's something for those voters that are really going to be voting exclusively on the economy and who feel like the Biden administration failed. It's going to be difficult for her to win them back anyway. Those are not the suburban voters with whom she's going to have sway. So I think she just needs to put something out there. She has to demonstrate some level of specificity, but she doesn't have to do the impossible.
So what is the challenge then for Vice President Harris to show that she, I guess, sort of feels the pain of many voters still, while still touting some of the successes that President Biden has had? I mean, the White House just put out a notice that it's been 2 years since they passed the Inflation Reduction Act.
This is what's really difficult because the Biden administration has done quite a bit for the economy, and their messaging just hasn't caught up with their actions. And so the American people aren't feeling the broader macroeconomic improvement that the country's experiencing. So what Kamala Harris needs to do first is highlight that she grew up middle class, that she understands the average pain that a typical family is experiencing, and that she wants to put into effect policies that will help grow the middle class. But this is a really challenging time. If people feel like they're not doing well, there's little she can do to tell them that they are.
Of course, former President Trump held another news conference at his Bedminster Golf Club yesterday, sort of hammering Harris and Biden over high prices. At the same time, sort of doubling down on the personal attacks, saying he's entitled to make personal attacks. What do you make of the evolving Trump strategy against the vice president?
The idea that he was going to give an economic policy speech yesterday seemed like the right idea for the Republicans because he was going to preempt anything she would say today. He was going to lay out a clear plan and tell people what a Trump administration would mean for them. The first couple of minutes of the speech seemed to go in that direction, but when he doubled down on the attacks, when he made it personal, when he started talking about all of his grievances again, he basically inoculated her from not having specific economic policies because no one was talking about his economic plan. They were talking about the fact that she's sort of making him come undone.
Just 30 seconds left, Jennifer. How could today's event for Vice President Harris in North Carolina set us up for what we see at the convention next week?
My sense is that she will lay out broad contours of an economic plan, and then the economy will be one of the key themes at the convention next week. So she doesn't want to test anything among an audience of delegates next week. She wants to begin speaking about these issues now. She wants to get some coverage of these issues now, so there are no surprises next Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed by 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, Sirius XM Channel 119, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm John Tucker. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.